Oh, hello. You found Waypoints, where the Waypoint staff and friends take a break to nerd out and deep dive on the culture, art, and entertainment that's been inspiring and provoking us lately. Gathered around the table this week, we've got Patrick Klepek.
I wasn't ready for the oh hello, so in my recording is a brief
Austin
giggle.
Walker.
Hey, how's it going? I'm here.
Kato.
You're so dark, Rob. I can't see you.
Kato,
Kato, are you okay?
is that?
That was a good one.
It was better.
Are we sure that was good? Man, I am
It was
backlit
better.
like crazy.
Oh.
This is a very like hello commander like perspective
Yeah.
you have on me right now, and I can't really.
the dude in control.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, no, that's even
Transfer.
that's
Yeah.
maybe even more accurate.
If Rob was
Where
just
he
sending
just-
over loops of like 6-second long, repeating shots, smoking a cigarette, and fading backwards into the darkness, that'd be great.
There was this one time I tried to get one of those little bags of Oreo cookies from the vending machine. I couldn't. I went home. I carried that with me. But something else came home with me too. And that's when my family died.
Oh shit!
Dark.
Killed by
That's-
Oreos.
Yeah, that's basically, well, you know, they're an archetypal object.
Right.
That's actually the true story of how Trench lost his family.
Right.
He made the mistake of like trying to use like he saw a vending machine that was stocked with the real stuff, not just like white label stuff, and he was like, "Damn, I could really go for the brand name." But he didn't realize that when brand name items appear in the oldest house, some shit is about to go down. And that's why everyone died.
That's it. Great.
That's my headcanon anyway.
Oh.
Speaking of really elaborate things happening in our own mind, Patrick, you wanted to there's a little of Twitter drama, as I understand it, that's happening on your timeline.
Yeah, I'm having a moment. Rob and Austin are already aware of it because I needed to declare it as soon as a couple days back. It's 2020, and I don't necessarily do like the resolution thing, but it is like a take stock of stuff. And like one of the things I was taking stock of was looking at my podcast feed. I do this every year. It's like, what are the ones I've wanted to listen to that I haven't gotten to? Like, why am I not getting to that stuff? How do I prioritize that? And I looked through and I was like, I'm going to get rid of some of these political pods that have turned into essentially cable news for me. It's just people talking. I'm not really learning anything. It's just chatter in the background, which can be fine. But
Yeah.
I keep up. I'm on Twitter all day. Like I keep up. Like I see that on Twitter. I like don't need it in a podcast. And so, like first thing on the chopping block was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna cut off the nostalgia. I'm gonna cut off the past. You know, the past is dead.
Yeah. Kill the past if you have to. Yeah.
Kill the past if you have to. And I decided to delete the Slate Political Gabfest.
Woo!
And
Welcome.
I did. There was no, because Austin like
Congratulations.
messaged, he was like, was there a moment? I was
Yeah.
like, no, there wasn't a moment. It was just like, I wasn't learning anything. And then at a certain point, that podcast became instructive in like, there was some use at times of like listening to people who were fundamentally centrist
When
and
Patrick
different
was a
than me.
child, he thought and spoke as a child.
Right.
And that was kind of interesting. And also just to like listen to a different version of yourself through whatever. Like there was things I got out of it, but it just not worth 90 minutes every week in perpetuity. I was like, all right, that's gone. And so because we done the political gabfest as a waypoint, I was like, I'll just tweet. I was like, self-care 2020, get rid of the Slate Political Gabfest. People were like, that's cool, me too. I'm thinking about stuff like that. Like I should get rid of Pod Save America. And I was like, yeah, man, you should do that too.
Yep.
And then every once in a while, I'll just check like new Twitter followers, like because I'm vain. And when I looked through, I saw that John Dickerson, one of the hosts of Slate's Political Gabfest, with 2 million followers and only 2,000 follows. There's like a certain formula to celebrity follows that's like if it goes over, I don't know, it's like 3,000, 4,000.
Yeah. That's
And then
about,
especially if they have like 20,000, that just means they're Insta following or like people over a certain count. They're doing like name searches and just following people above a certain follow threshold.
or they have a
And-
service. Some celebrities straight up have a service or an app, but most likely an actual service or an assistant who is like meant to follow accounts that will theoretically follow them back and boost their shit to grow even more. Like literally just, I need you to goose these numbers by finding the most like trendy people to follow who will help me grow, which is wild.
Yeah, it's like a celebrity version of like on the Instagram culture of like follow me, follow back,
right.
sort of stuff that happens. And so I see that and stunned to silence because this happened to me before. This is why Rivers Cuomo started following me on Twitter, which was a similar situation of me shit talking the latest Weezer album, and then ding, a little later, Rivers Cuomo was following you.
Yeah,
and like I don't know what to do about this. Like there is like a place in my heart for like that podcast, as much as like it's not for me anymore. I'm a different person. And at
also,
the same time,
But we can all agree John Dickerson held that thing together.
right. Well, like there's a degree.
Star.
Well, it's
I don't know. I think Emily Bazelon at a certain point became the one that was throwing punches. But that's
wait.
it's
We
like almost
can't
neither
go
here
down
nor
this.
there.
Right. We can't go down.
We
this
can't
road
do this.
again.
We can't do this.
What I will say
it's
is
most,
that
go ahead.
what I will say about it is that Dickerson tended to bring a perspective and information, just information, not that there's like
Historical,
non-ideological
yes.
information, but you know what I'm saying, accounts
Yes.
that I wasn't familiar with, and that perspective maybe would lead me to a different place than Dickerson would, but I always enjoyed the road that we were on together. Because he was the road that he was driving me down. We were not on a road together. Because unlike
we got off at different exits.
Exactly,
but
we were on
it was useful to go.
He dropped me off on the way. It sounds like now you're in the car again with him. You guys are going, you're buddies basically.
He picked me up. I didn't like someone else like, hey, can you give me a ride to this place?
You were
like,
holding a sign that
I'll
said,
send my
"Hey, fuck that guy," and he was like, "Pull over. Do you want to get in? You want to hop in the back?" That's basically.
And so when Rivers followed me, and I wasn't like sure what, like he also had a similar like 2000 count where I was like, oh, this seems like it might actually be a legitimate follow, but I don't know. And so, you know, I've told this story in different venues, but like I met him before when I was like 14, and like he meant a lot to me at a certain time in my life, and so I'm just gonna DM him, and I'm just gonna like say that like and see what happens. What happened was it got shot into the void, which is fine. Like it was just like a cathartic thing for me to do. I have no idea if he read it because it doesn't. I guess maybe if I opened it in Twitter, there might have been a read receipt, but whatever. It was just like a thing that I did for myself. So now the question in front of me is like, I feel less bad about like, I'll say whatever the fuck I want. Like, I don't even know if John Dickerson checks his timeline or if he just follows people,
Right.
tweets, and then it goes. I don't know how he has 2 million followers. His tweets are not very good. And so, I don't know
Wow,
what the
you're
deal is
really
there.
digging deep. You're really just like gonna double down on. What if he's listening right now?
I guess what I mean by the tweets not being very good is like his engagement is extremely low.
Well-
and so it just makes me wonder how someone gets to 2 million follows when the just an innocuous tweet is like 45 likes. It's like, but dude, you have 2
Can I
million
tell you something
followers.
funny? Actually, here is there are 2 John Dickerson accounts, and they're both John Dickerson. But
Excuse me?
yeah, and I think which one followed you?
I'm looking. Hold on, I'm pulling.
Because the thing that's weird is the smaller one is the promotional one. The bigger one, I think, is his actual account.
No, this is him. This is the.
Okay, because there's
These ones occasionally have tweets of his that seem like they were just written
by him.
When I was in college, I played my extremely loud.
Yeah,
So,
I also think
there's,
that's him because if you check the other things recently followed, one of the things he actually recently followed on that account is just something that quotes 2,000 different lines from Moby Dick one at a time in random order, which is the most John Dickerson.
Yeah.
That is the most like, yeah, I'll follow that. I'll add a little Moby Dick to my day thing that I can imagine an actual human doing.
Add it to the timeline.
Yeah,
put
okay, so this is the thing that I think the timeline is such a different thing once you pass a certain follower threshold, both as people following you and you following other people. Like making that transition in the last 5 years for me has been very fucking weird because I spent most of my time on Twitter for years having a very small amount of people who would interact with me and only following a handful of people. I always wanted to keep that ratio tight. But after a certain point, it was like, I'll just follow. You're in an industry. You want to network. You want to build a relationship with people. You follow people because you think their work is good. You follow people because you met them at an event. You follow people because you want to meet them at an event and network.
Or someone followed you and they seem important. You're like, I'm going to follow back just because that seems like a smart idea.
That seems like a smart. Hey,
you work at the New York Times. Let's go.
Let's go. Absolutely. I literally in looking through John Dickerson's things, I realized he followed Ronan Farrow, and then I realized Ronan Farrow followed me, and I didn't know that. So I was like, I got to hit follow back on that. You never fucking know. You never know. And
hey
so,
man, he was. I've mentioned this
you've
before.
mentioned this
he
before.
used to be on the Gaming Age forums.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
he's got an old school
background. The thing that ends up happening is you end up once you pass following 1,000 people, it's a stream. It's like you're never catching up on Twitter. You're never done with Twitter.
It's just a
anymore.
river.
It's a river. You're in a river. You might set up I have a thing that's like, here are the 100 people who I'm genuinely really close with, and I try to keep up on that, like a list. But even that can be a lot. So yeah, it's a different experience. But maybe he's adding. He's like, I need a little Patrick Klepek spice. I need a little bit of that just every now and then.
How? So I was very specific in that I didn't tag anyone.
Yeah.
I even thought about not tweeting it because I was afraid people were gonna take the harshness at which we talked about the podcast to be like, haha, like fucking tag. I guess you could tag plots.
He would invite it, right? That's his whole fucking jam.
He would. What would actually have been better is like Plots follows me and it's like, what's up, motherfucker? Like, well, he wouldn't say that, but like, he would be like, yo, let's talk about this. Well, let's have an open discourse because that's how we're gonna solve this.
Was it an open discourse or a conversation in a closed room with cigars where no one else gets to hear? Because that's where the real work gets done, Patrick.
Would Plots do it in a DM? He might do it in.
He might do it in the DM. Yeah.
But now I'm in what I consider the worst of all worlds, which is just the passive follow, which is that somehow it came to his attention. He seems like the kind of person that might have like maybe a name alert, but that's just Twitter. So how would that go to like I don't know.
I have a theory.
How?
I have like a next level conspiracy theory. What if one of his kids?
Let's go.
What if one of his kids is a fan of yours?
Ooh.
Whoa.
Because that's the sort of back end shit that you see in sports sometimes, or like a team owner's child, is connected to blah blah blah. What if one of his kids follows you and was like, hey, Dad, one of my favorite games journalists, stop listening to the fucking podcast. Like giving him shit the way kids do, which is fair. And is like, oh yeah, they did this episode about you guys once. You should listen to it. And then John Dickerson, who is a magnanimous man, is my understanding, was like, I'll follow this Patrick Klepek fellow, and then did. This is my working
no follow-up.
But no follow-up.
Maybe he likes the cut of your jib.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Well, Austin, you got followed randomly by like Maggie Haberman at some point,
Yeah, that
right?
did happen, which is so funny. And I think for 3 days, I was like, I got to make my tweets less shitty. And then I was like, I got to make my... then she had some bad take. And I was like, I got to make my tweets more shitty. You gotta fucking see this, Maggie. Get ready for these memes.
I think one helpful thing about this period has been that like mainstream media elites are not better. They are not smarter.
No.
They're just people.
Yes.
And you should not feel culpable or particularly observed if you have to get something off your chest about how you feel about their output or how their outlet's doing these days.
But this is different. Like, I doubt it was like Austin like tweeting about a bad New York Times headline or Brett Stevens and Maggie's like, gotta follow Austin. Like, you've had a couple political tweets like go pretty viral. And my guess is my theory would be like, she was like, oh, it seems like a smart person, like click follow in the way that we do all the time with stuff like that. This is like far more targeted and specific, and
yet it's not.
It's stressing. No, it's not. But I'm gonna end up like
embarrassing yourself.
I'm gonna end up sending a DM.
Austin, we are 20 minutes into a discussion of Patrick's Twitter followership.
It's amazing.
And the etiquette of the situation. Embarrassment, look behind you.
Well, like I've been thinking a lot about Twitter lately because it's fake. Okay, I've been thinking about Twitter lately because they rolled out.
Yeah.
They rolled out. They rolled out a.
The big take for 2020.
Like, there's no fucking reason I should have the followers. Okay, there is a reason, and it's like luck and preparation, but even the preparation is luck. I made a joke to a friend yesterday. I don't know how to get into the whole joke, but the joke included the punchline of like, if I had posted what you just posted, 75,000 people would have fucking seen it. And I felt bad immediately because it felt like I was like beating my chest about my reach or something. But I know my reach is bullshit. Like, I understand 20,000 of those people don't read Twitter anymore, or were bots, or were whatever, right? Like, that is part of the account, or part of like the way Twitter works. 2, it was so much right place, right time, happened to have the right perspective on something, but I'd had good perspectives before gaining Twitter followers, and I just happened to not have the right connections to get those retweeted in the right places. I happened to not be working at
going to a place
giantbomb.com.
like Giant Bomb,
exactly.
like immediately goes,
or Vice,
like
who could push even, those things were like, those things helped build that list. It's not like a meritocracy on Twitter. It's fucking fake.
No.
And then you end up, but at the same time, you end up looking at something like those new proposed Twitter rules around the statements.
Replies.
All my tweets are statements
From now on.
That's going to be me.
Are you going to do that?
Oh, hell yeah.
Do you want to explain what the system is?
Well, I didn't look too much into the system, but I do know that now for people that for blue checks at least, Twitter's going to be like, you can just like post a tweet like normal, or you can release it as a statement.
Is
it
no
just
blue
replies
checks?
required.
I hope it's
No,
not.
I think this is.
It has to be. So
No,
here's
this has got to be a
This is.
universal
I'll read
thing.
I'll read the tweet. I will read the tweet. All right, we delivered the news. Twitter will soon let you restrict who can reply to your tweets. Your options will be global, anyone can reply; group, only people you follow and mention can reply, but I guess that tweet is still seen by everybody; panel, only people you mention in the tweet can reply; or statement, nobody can reply. So, like, there's worlds in which you could imagine, like, oh, the three of us are going to have a panel on whatever, and we're going to do, I have these experts on gun control, and we're going to sit here and we're going to talk through, gun violence, and we don't want the replies to be filled with bullshit, right? Or you could, for instance, say that guns actually are the best thing and we should have 30 more of them, set it to 30 more of them per person in America, set it to statement, and then no one can disagree with you because you can just make a statement now. No more ratios. You're safe. The ratio can't hurt you anymore. I have such weird mixed feelings about this policy.
For John Chait.
It's true. Like on one hand, I like the idea of, like, I could just message Kato a meme and it can just be us having a good time without.
But people can still see it, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's not a DM. Do you know what I mean? But
Right.
But I
But
also
what they can't do is be like, haha, I got that joke. I'm going to repeat the joke.
Yeah.
They can't do that.
Which is not harmful by itself.
This
It's
is
not
a mean
harmful.
Kato moment.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a harmful thing when that happens. But when it's like 200 people who do the repeat the joke back to you thing, it's just like an annoyance.
Well, that's the thing about Twitter, right? Is like everything is not everything, but like so much of what is aggravating at Twitter is fundamentally innocuous. It is simply the volume and repetition of it that makes it kind of unbearable. It's I don't know. It's the same reason that people listen to a lot of podcasts develop real weird hangups about things individual podcasters do, right? We've all gotten some sort of feedback about like, hey, you notice like Rob does this one thing a lot. And I'm like, fuck, I do that one thing a lot. I never thought about it. And then I have to think about it again. And I'm like, but that doesn't matter. That's just like.
That's just people.
Yeah, exactly.
People do a thing a lot. People be doing things a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it's
like,
weird.
just be yourself on Twitter. But like, I'm just excited for a world where I can release statements like every day. Like, here's a memorandum.
Here's today's
from the
a
desk
morning statement
of
from the
Zachney.
desk of Robert. Rob, I want you to do this. Just one statement.
New Twitter
a day.
account. New Twitter account. The desk of Robert
Desk,
Zachney.
yeah, live from the desk of Robert Zachney. This is Robert Zachney. I love it. Can we get a show for you? Vice on TV. They renamed Viceland. Vice on TV presents live from the desk of Robert Zachney, starring or featuring. Which would you prefer, Rob? It's your show.
No, it's someone else reading Rob's tweet.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
I got
absolutely.
declaration.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Rob,
a little fanfare.
he's got better
Yeah.
things to do. He doesn't need to read that tweet.
Right.
He wrote it.
Action Bronson reads Rob Zachney's tweets. Did either of you see The Irishman yet?
What are we doing?
Okay. This is connected. So no, the answer is
All right.
no. Neither of you
No,
saw The
no.
Irishman?
Too long.
Well, it was connected to the last thing I said, so don't worry about it. Anyway,
Was it? Does Hoffa release statements?
Action Bronson is in The Irishman. This is the cameo that
Okay.
Natalie wanted to tell
Oh.
y'all
We
like a
should have
month ago.
spoiled that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I remember that.
well,
Eh.
he sells coffins. It's a whole thing. Anyway,
Great.
Yeah.
the more important, the actual pivot we should make here is, you remember
Well,
when I was like, anybody could get a high follower count? That's kind of luck. It's kind of like you're not born into it. There's not like you were born and designated someone who will get a good Twitter account. It's work and it's luck. I think that was kind of the message of The Last Jedi. I feel like that was the little kid with the broom could also get blue checked on Twitter. Even though he was just a
Anyone
little
can be
broom, anyone
verified.
can be verified.
You're blue sensitive?
Yeah, you're blue sensitive. It's possible.
You too can release a statement.
But
See, I'm gonna throw this car in reverse. I
Okay.
have the better like.
give me yours.
So Patrick was putting away the past. Cutting
Yes,
off
good.
cutting off his nostalgia. He's going to stop motivating himself by nostalgic attachment to things past,
Yes.
which is not the tack that J.J. Abrams took with The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Wow.
We should just,
I guess
up
he-
front we just say we're gonna go. Hold on,
We're gonna
hold
go
on.
deep,
Up front
right?
we just say we're gonna go full spoilers. We're not gonna do like a spoiler. So it's just like you haven't seen
This
it.
is the spoiler
You know.
cast.
Yeah, we're going to talk
Yeah.
all the way about. Also, if you were like, oh, wow, they did a Star Wars spoiler cast, then you got 25 minutes of us talking about a podcast you've never heard of and what it's like being verified. I want to be clear.
Look,
They
I
should
spent my whole
extend-
life trying to get verified.
That wasn't on my rundown.
They should extend to everyone any of the benefits of being verified in terms of like hiding replies from people who don't follow you, shit like that. Just want to say that.
Yeah,
Put that
whatever.
out
Pay
there.
for the stats and analytics and bullshit,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
everything else, the features should go to everybody.
everybody.
If you're brave enough with the mute button, you can live that verified life.
Just block people. Fucking mute is a half
because
measure.
then they know.
Don't
I
give
want
them
them
no,
to
no,
know.
back
That's
to this.
that's the
Right,
goddamn
but,
point.
So this is the thing I went through this
Oh,
last
God.
year where I hit the moment where I was like, me muting people keeps them in my replies. This is why we got to move to statements. You're right. This is why we got to go to statements. Because then the fascists can't reply and use my platform to send their bullshit. Anyway, Star Wars.
Austin steps up to the microphone, taps it a couple times.
I'd like to make a statement.
Have you ever seen a take so bad you immediately have to go to sleep? Turns away from the mic, walks back.
You know what?
I want his room.
Oh, can I
I want a feature where you. I want a feature where you can't retweet it. You just can't do it. It's like I said something incredible. It's just
That's
there.
for me.
Wow.
That's for
That's
me.
for me. No tweets, no likes.
Text
Bon
it.
Momo.
Screenshot
That-
it. Yeah, yeah. That's
True
right.
statement is just it
So
exists and cannot be
Instagram.
interacted with.
I want Instagram. Yeah, we're talking about other social media platforms. Bring back Google Plus. I miss groups. All right.
Groups are good.
Oh, hello.
good.
You found Waypoints, where the Waypoint staff and friends take a break to nerd out and deep dive on the culture, art, and entertainment that's been inspiring and provoking. us lately.
Provoking.
Yeah.
We're provoked, Rob. We're provoked. This is what it
Today
means
we're
to
going
be
to be talking
provoked.
about the rise of Skywalker, and only that.
Oh, that's not true. Also, the Mandalorian.
Star Wars.
So, as you indicated, Patrick, it's going to be spoilerific. We're not going to be like hiding information. There's no mystery box in this podcast that we're keeping sealed. We're going to crack that thing.
The
all the way
spoilers
open.
speak.
Oh my God. And they speak via Fortnite.
The whole galaxy has heard the spoilers shout.
God. Did you see that? Can I start here? Here's where I will start.
Yes.
6
Let's
minutes.
do it.
Okay, so the day that the day that this movie comes out, the first 6 minutes leak. And the first 6 minutes include one of the big...
We talking Thursday night, Friday morning?
Well, I thought Friday morning. So this is Friday morning. Maybe
Okay.
people had already seen it. I had not seen the movie by then. But the first 6 minutes were like shot with a phone because you could just do that. Put online, and the premise of the film then is revealed, right? The premise of the film is Emperor Palpatine is back, baby, and he's on a planet...
Released a statement.
Really, he did it, and this is the thing is in the movie you can't see the statement. In the movie it says the dead speak. Emperor Palpatine back from the grave. Now hear this, and he is.
How good would it have been if that hadn't been in the trailer? How good would it have been if you sat the fuck down for that movie and it said the dead speak, Palpatine is back, and you're like, what?
Excuse me?
Well, and so the thing is, it's in the trailer. They had to announce it ahead of time so they could do the tie-in with Fortnite, which is where the message plays. And so that morning, I was like, I'm going to spoil the first 6 minutes of this for myself.
Wait.
Have you not heard the good
Wait.
news? What's up? Palpatine
What?
is the Fortnite. That is where
That's Kato. I'm right there with you. This is what melted my brain.
Excuse me?
Like I walked out of that movie
Yeah.
with my partner, and I was like, I feel like so the original trilogy skips time constantly between the movies, but you never get the sense that you missed anything critical, right? Like, okay, the rebels have abandoned Yavin and now they're on this ice planet.
A New Hope opens in the middle of an escape.
In medias res is like the mode of Star Wars.
Right, but like you can always sort of put it together really quickly as to like, this makes sense. Like this is a good place to come in on the story. Emperor Palpatine being alive and being returned to the Star Wars universe is not a thing you skip, right? And I was talking like as I came out of the theater, I was like, yeah, it just feels like there was too much going on across this trilogy, or across this one movie that they were like cutting out and just trying to pick up midstream. I had no idea. I thought that was the mistake they made. What I didn't realize was that they had reserved crucial plot developments.
That was a strategy
for their
they
marketing tie-in.
Right. You also.
I'm actually not that cynical about it.
That is not the beef. That is not my beef with it. My beef is not just it's in Fortnite. My beef is actually what the text is, and it ends up being indicative of, I think, directions that they took in the film. So that text, I'll just read it. I'm not going to make Kato play it because it goes on for fucking ever because Palpatine speaks the way he does. At last, the work of generations is complete. The great error is corrected. The day of victory is at hand. The day of revenge. The day of the Sith. And the idea, so immediately I'm like, okay, this is the movie we're going to get into. The one where Palpatine sends a message out to everyone in the galaxy that he was not the senator turned emperor unrightfully deposed by terrorists. He is Mr. Sith. He is the dude who's going to beat his chest about being an evil space wizard.
A world where The Force Awakens opens with people like forgetting the Jedi and the Force.
Again.
But suddenly people are going to be scared of a guy who fell down a shaft.
So immediately I'm like, okay, this movie is
he was thrown down a shaft by an evil space wizard, Patrick. It's not like an elevator door opened. He just stepped into it and there's no fucking car there.
Oh my God.
Nobody just didn't eat shit someday.
That's what who knows? Maybe that's how maybe that was a clone emperor already, Rob.
The emperor died at the construction site. There was an open shaft left in the throne room.
This is why
the
Empire needs better safety regulations. So I go into the movie with that in my mind. Yeah, please unionize Imperial workers. Imperial Workers Union 421. All right. So with that energy is what I went into the theater with. That mixed with this other thing, which is a little sadder. I don't think this hit me until the next day. I will say up top, like I was pretty disappointed in this film, but it didn't strike me until the next day that this was kind of it for an entire chapter. Like, all right, Star Wars isn't going anywhere. Nothing ever really dies under capitalism except for people.
They're announcing a new movie this month.
Right, exactly. But the Skywalker saga, which was retroactively called the Skywalker saga, is something that has been in my life since I was like 6, right? Like I have early distinct visual memories of being in my dad's apartment playing with like a flashlight as if it were a lightsaber, like coming to love the franchise of Star Wars, loving the aesthetic, having it. I said earlier or late last year that I realized while watching the first episode of Mandalorian, like, oh, this is the only thing I love. Like, this is the only thing I have that not childlike wonder and glee and naivety, but like a sort of deep continuity of self that has not been broken the way my love for football was broken by CTEs and, you know, all sorts of other issues with the NFL around racism and stuff like that. Where like that degree of instant response, that positive response that I don't get for anything else that I love. I like Gundam a lot. I love Gundam. I love, you know, RPGs. There's all sorts of stuff. I love people in my life, obviously. But in terms of like things that I like, most of them are really compromised and are compromised in a way that is front of mind instead of back of mind. But when I see a cool Star Wars prop, my heart beats. And so going into this movie, all of that was carrying with it. And so the stakes were higher than I thought they might be, because the next day I found myself so deeply disappointed because I felt like they completely missed the landing on something that won't happen again in my life. This is it for things I had 30 plus years of investment in, trying to tie a bow on it. And that's okay. That happens. Like, this isn't a personal tragedy or something.
More often than not.
Right, exactly. But to recognize that I was in that moment of like, oh, fuck, they're not going to get another chance to do this. And in fact, maybe they did it for me last time with the end of Last Jedi, which is when when it struck me how much Luke meant to me and Luke's arc meant to me, and how well how much I appreciated the way his arc wraps up in that film. Like, okay, maybe I just need to rely on the fact that I got that already, and now this was going to be icing, but it was just really poisonous icing for me. I don't know, just like bare level response. Did y'all leave the theater in positive places and negative places, indifferent?
That movie is about what Oh, go ahead, Rob.
No, I think you and I might have ended up in the same place. So I watched it a day or two after the, you know, opening night people had seen it. Mm-hmm. And so I'd already heard really negative reactions from some of my friends. So I went in with lowered expectations.
Okay.
And juxtaposed against those expectations, the movie was all right. But at the same time, I think it certainly ill-served the work that was done in The Last Jedi. And it also seemed to mangle or render unsatisfying just about every major character arc that has been set up throughout this new trilogy. And so it's a weird thing where, like, as a work of disposable entertainment, as a spectacle that washes over you, I was like, yeah, all right, that was some Star Wars. But the moment you stop and think about anything that happened, it becomes a really frustrating film, I think.
I was in an openly hostile theater that was remarkable. I've never seen a theater. I saw Cats, I guess, last week, which was also hostile, but everyone was there to have a good time. And also that theater had a bar. So different experience. And
also that's like people are going into it. Like there was a societal shift towards like, this is what Cats is, as opposed to your experience being like in real time, people having a reaction to a thing that they didn't expect.
Yeah. The theater I was in laughed at like the Rey Palpatine reveal, like laughed. There were key moments where like groans are just like echoing through the room as dialogue is bad, or as Chewbacca shows back up for the fifth thing that they walk back in that movie. Kyle, you're wearing a Star Wars shirt.
Yeah.
How was your impression?
It was bad. I walked out of there being like, this, like, tried its best to make sure that The Last Jedi didn't exist in like the most kind of weird backhanded way too. Like, apart from just like ignoring some things, like the amount of stuff that it like the whole thing with C-3PO, like they erased C-3PO's memory of that movie.
Right. I forgot. So wait.
Yeah.
Is that
where
the cut is? Is that the like?
Yeah. He is about to leave with Rey on her first mission, which is before The Last Jedi.
Wow. Well, that's something. Yeah, so the thing for me is like I think I could fuck around and go for 30 hours about the things I didn't like about this movie, and I don't think that's a particularly productive way to contribute to a podcast. But I'm curious.
And yet,
I wish they had.
I have a statement
in
17 tweets in a row. No, go ahead, Patrick.
I wish they just let Abrams make the whole trilogy at this point. Like I guess in a world where also Rian Johnson would have made good movies anyway. Like he's such a talented filmmaker. Like this third film feels very much like all those threads that didn't get picked up in the second movie. We're just gonna find a way to weave those back in and make two movies in one. And I don't know if that necessarily would have made for like an altogether satisfying trilogy, but it would have made more sense within the arc of the threads that were being laid down. But at the same time, I'm glad. Like if I like The Force Awakens a lot, I truly do enjoy that movie. I think Rey is like a really interesting character, and the fact that Last Jedi exists at all is sort of like remarkable as a thing. Like it's like the weaknesses of Rise of Skywalker only make the boldness of The Last Jedi all the more interesting. Like in some ways, I think it makes it a stronger film if you can disconnect like your disappointment of where it doesn't or doesn't take story threads, because like The Rise of Skywalker with JJ, like I'm not gonna sort of like defend him, but I think they picked a poor filmmaker, and he's even admitted this in lots of interviews. It's like like I know what I'm good at, and I know I'm not good at this part, but they picked me because they had a year and a half to make a movie, and I can do that. And so all the weaknesses of this movie are all the weaknesses of J.J. Abrams as a filmmaker. And so like the structure of this like series of movies is like I think a more fundamental critique of like this trilogy, because there just didn't seem to be enough of an understanding. Like the jump from Force Awakens to Last Jedi is fucked up. Like it doesn't it's not how you do a sequel. That's part of what makes it interesting and bold, but it's not how we usually think of like connective threads of a series of movies. And so I don't know. I have trouble like getting too angry about Rise of Skywalker because it's exactly what I expected J.J. Abrams to do. It's like super in line with what he is as a filmmaker. And it's just unfortunate that that's the filmmaker we got to land it. And it's too bad that Rian Johnson didn't have the energy to do them back to back as he was originally going to do. But like I think, like I said, I guess in conclusion, I like The Last Jedi even more despite my disappointment of Skywalker, because that's a movie I didn't come out of liking very much. I didn't dislike it. I came out like, what? And my reaction to like the arc of Luke Skywalker was, I think my mixed reaction was what the movie wanted. And it was a movie that in conversations, in reading about it, I didn't watch it again until the week before seeing Rise of Skywalker. And then that was like a movie I was revisiting after having had all those conversations and watching all those conversations. I was like, this is a tremendously bold film that doesn't make any sense that it should exist. And for the same reasons that Rise of Skywalker doesn't connect to Last Jedi is the same reason that Last Jedi doesn't connect to Force Awakens. And so it's like the lack of a hand like over those three movies and making sure they all like talk to one another is also why Last Jedi exists. And the fact that Luke Skywalker gets the arc that he does, I think makes all three films worth it in the end, because to make him a failure that learns from it is, I think, like one of the boldest things you could have done with any of those characters.
Right. I mean, agreed 100%. And I want to believe in a world in which you get The Last Jedi and then also you hand off the final piece of the puzzle to a filmmaker who somehow extends that work. Or, the thing about synthesis is that it is... I would have loved a version of a third film that synthesized the first two instead of simply negating the second part.
Or if they were swapped in some way, right? Like, 'cause The Last Jedi feels like a conclusion.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
there are like lingering threads. Kylo Ren is still out there. Like, the First Order is still a quote unquote threat. But like, I think that's like part of what makes the end of Last Jedi. Like, if you just imagine that last scene in The Last Jedi, it's like, oh, cool. Like, that's it. That's the wrap around the Skywalker saga. Like, we're done.
Right.
But it was crammed into a second movie, and Star Wars is quote unquote supposed to be trilogies because George Lucas at one point says,
I bet it was
9 movies.
I bet it was in a fucking contract when he signed this shit over. It was like, you're going to wrap up the Skywalker saga with 9 movies or 3 more movies, and that is it. And then you can do other stuff in the universe. But I think that you're right that you're also you're revealing a sort of frankly a capitalist logic that is like, underneath some of the decisions, which is they're better at making the open-ended film that ends with, and then we could do 30 stories in this time zone, right? Like in the same way that Star Wars Clone Wars, the TV show, has gone for 5 seasons, I think a 6th is coming, that fill in the gaps between Attack of the Clones and the end of, or maybe does it go beyond Revenge of the Sith at this point, or maybe
no, I think it goes Clone Wars wrapped, and then now we're in Rebels, right?
I know, but I'm trying to place it in the timeline.
I think Clone Wars takes place post Attack of the Clones, pre Revenge of the Sith,
right? And like,
which is why people think the prequels are any good. Is because
been a
Clones
lot
has done
of-
all
well-
this work to make characters.
well, I think part of the reason the prequels are good, and at this point I will get into some of the stuff that I actually just really actually dislike about Rise of Skywalker, is the prequels failed a lot, but they failed at trying to bring in new ideas, new symbols, new machines, new characters. The main motivators were still a Skywalker, was still Obi-Wan, right? Was still Yoda, was still Palpatine, characters on the stage that we already know. But in terms of visual like designs, in terms of places, if I say Naboo, you probably know where Naboo is. If I say Coruscant, you probably know what Coruscant is. If I say if you're listening and you haven't seen, one of these movies in a long time, and I say Darth Maul's ship, you might not know what I'm talking about. But let me tell you, Darth Maul had a dope fucking ship. I remember it to this day. It's slick and silver and smooth. You talk about like the pit droids and the pod racing and the like weird bullshit on Coruscant. There's a lot happening in those movies visually that is memorable and striking and original in its or at least its attempt to be original. The Trade Federation, I want to be clear, one, there's a lot of racism in that movies. They're pulling a lot on like shitty stereotypes. But there are still like characters with costume designs that feel like they come from a culture. There is a place, even the stuff that I don't love plot-wise often has some underlying visual element. I keep hitting visual a lot because I think this is the stuff that those movies do well. And then the Clone Wars expands
It also
on that
has a very political element.
totally,
that, like,
absolutely.
is completely absent from, like the new trilogy of like how exactly did
Who knows?
why did they come back, and at least
read a book.
The prequels like are yeah,
right, they put it all in the books, I guess. Whereas my biggest beef with Rise of Skywalker is its immense failure to imagine anything new or to be able to pull the levers of anything except nostalgia. There's a moment in this movie where someone in the First Order, I don't remember if it's the Emperor or if it's Hux or if it's the other Admiral dude, is like, we need to make them feel bad, or whatever. He's like, take something from them, right? Find a way to hurt them. And what they do is they blow up a planet, the planet that's like already been terrorized and oppressed and occupied by the First Order. Planet that we've been to once in this trilogy, just now, that no one in the theater remembers the name of, probably, right? That no one here remembers now. It was the place where it was dark and snowy, and they met Babu Fritt or Bobby Fruit, whatever his name was, the little
Babu
guy.
Frick.
Bobby
Frick. My boy Bobby Fruit.
Bobby Fruit was good. You already know what it is. Hashtag free Bobby.
He was very good. That was a great little
right.
puppet.
And like, okay, cool.
I was like,
puppet.
oh no, Kerry Russell.
Right, except don't worry. One more thing that they fucking rewind in this movie, because there are no stakes, is the destruction of the killing of the characters that you just met. So that's like C-3PO, Chewbacca, Luke throwing the saber away and feeling bad about sabers, his own saber, Babu Fritt and Kerry Russell. There's no bad thing that you can do in this movie that they can't just rewind a moment. Death, obviously, that has a cost in the end. And so for me, like, that was so emblematic of one of the problems with this film was, because there has not been the investment in new places, because there isn't a Coruscant or a Naboo for this new trilogy, when they're like, all right, take something from them that means something, they don't have anything. And then that ends up leading to shots like, oh, wow, look, she has Luke's X-Wing. Oh, wow, look, Luke's saber. Oh, wow, look, like, even the moments in this movie that I think were really well done, I think one of my favorite bits of this is Adam Driver adopting some of Harrison Ford's mannerisms in the final act after he, like, returns as Ben Solo. And, like,
that little slide he does around the corner.
The groan, the shrug, even that stuff is still rooted in, hey, remember Han Solo? That movie is very much like the Demi Ready Player One song. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please look up I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm an asshole. I'd have to look it up to try. What is he? Electro Lemon on Twitter?
Yeah.
Electro Lemon on Twitter.
Yes.
His Ready Player One, Remember Back to the Future song, or it's a Ready Player One song.
But at least that little stuff, like the slide, is something like I only noticed when people were taking pirated GIFs out and like, look at this, and I was like, oh, like that's how you do a bit like that if you're going to do it. Is like people later being like, did you notice that? Like, look at that little thing he did, as opposed to like, you know, a lot of things like the X-Wing rising up, which is like, look at this big dramatic shot. How is this X-Wing still functioning exactly?
It's space man. I don't know. But like, and so to remedy that, what they did is to remedy the lack of things that you, the audience, and these characters were invested in, or to remedy their absence of understanding what those things should have been, they decided to rely on old things and turn the dial to 11 on everything else. And so this is how you get the 13-year-old's idea of what an empire is when the Emperor reveals his infinite armada of ships that have the Death Star gun on them. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that is what power looks like to you is... Oh, what if we took
an after dark screensaver?
Right, yeah, exactly. Like, what if we took the Death Star? What if we put the Death Star gun on like 100 ships? That would be sick. That's how you get scenes where the Emperor's like, I am all of the Sith. And then Rey is like, well, I am all of the Jedi. It's like, dog, go watch Return of the Jedi. Go watch Revenge of the Sith. Those are films that end in intimate or conflict between a handful of people. Return of the Jedi ends with 3 people in a room, where like the big climax is Vader, Luke, and the Emperor. And there are certainly, metaphorical, they're certainly analogous to some other larger conflict, but they're not literally supposed to be all of the Sith and all of the Jedi. We understand that allegory is happening, and because it's allegory, we can instead spend time on character work. We can spend time on Luke being pulled between his drive for justice and therefore violence, but also his love for his father and his belief in redemption. If you even look at the final fight in Revenge of the Sith, and Patrick, you just watched this way more recently than I don't know, Kato or Rob, if you've seen this lately, but like that final in my memory, that final fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin is kind of tortured acting because that's what was written for them, but there's still an emotional heart to the idea. Oh,
it's Ewan McGregor is acting the shit out of that scene to like,
absolutely,
which is what you notice across. I watched basically all 6 movies like before, all 8 movies before it came out, and like one, you watch the prequels and it's like awful CG, pretty bad CG, and then like, I can watch this without like wanting to tear my eyes out. Like Revenge of the Sith still looks pretty decent. Like it's very watchable, whereas like Attack of the Clones, like the final climactic battle, really looks like a PlayStation 2 like cutscene. It's unbelievable.
Which is to say, it will only get cooler with age because we're moving now from PS1.
On some level it does, but like we're actually in a weird point where it doesn't. Like I think in like 5-10 years you'll look
exactly
back and
be like,
it'll age better, but like right now it looks extremely strange. But it's but that's also a scene that like. In my head, when I think of the fight in Revenge of the Scene, I think of the high ground. I think of the memes. Like the prequels have been so memed into my head, specifically that like that fight in particular. But it does have like Ewan McGregor does like give a lot of weight to that. Exactly. Yeah. But like Ewan McGregor does give a lot of weight to that scene, even if he's not working with a whole lot.
But like versus this, which was. Still a fight between 3 people with Kylo showing up to fight. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of that fight in terms of why didn't Palpatine stop using the lightning or whatever. It's like this is where it was going. But that sequence wanted to introduce a new concept, or I guess that film introduced a dyad in the Force. Is that what it was called? A dyad in the Force? As if that was an established thing that we were supposed to care deeply about. It was not just a fight between 3 people because the Emperor's guards or the Knights of Ren or whatever were there being chopped up, and there were nameless Sith citizens, Sith cultists, miles
who
of
never
them.
did anything.
Unclear.
They're just in the background. They're watching all this pop off, and they're like, I'm not doing shit.
I really wish we had the Mandalorian episode 8 conversation, the Scout Trooper one, but between members of that cult.
Hey, should he still be shooting the lightning?
He should probably stop with the lightning.
Man, she's getting up and like coming closer. Should we tackle her? It's like, nah.
imagine if
don't
they given
embarrass the
Taika
Emperor on his first day back.
This movie, god damn it.
I absolutely read those people as not being there.
Wait, really?
I thought that was the representation of every Sith that's ever existed in Palpatine, like ghostly being there, but not really, right? Like,
No, I think they're cultists.
like they
I
were
think they're
actual
there.
people.
I think they were. What was the name of that planet? I went to type it into
Exegol.
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 Good.
Yeah.
Nice work.
It was like a way less believable thing that.
It's just that there were so many.
Grand Admiral Thrawn's secret empire that he built out
right.
beyond the Outer Rim.
Yes, it literally is that, Rob. Except we don't see the
Except
ship.
Thrawn had a reason and it made sense.
You don't think the Emperor has a reason? The Emperor wants to keep living?
To what? What does he want to do? What does he want to do?
No idea.
He
Continue
built
the
a bunch of
Sith-
ships that can blow up every planet. What next?
Why not use them?
Motherfucker, what are you going to do?
Or not use them? Make a decision. Yeah.
They were trying to use them.
No, they
I
weren't,
did.
because they had them. They could have used them, and instead he locked them up as a reward for Kylo Ren.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
At the end, they're trying to like leave.
But they could have left.
Yeah.
Let me tell
earlier.
you, instead of sending a broadcast,
Right.
he could have sent a fleet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is what my Sheev would have sent a
Not
fleet.
my Sheev.
Hashtag not my Sheev. His name is Sheev Palpatine.
But I do think, I think there's a rite of passage you go through as a Star Wars fan. Pretty much any franchise, but Star Wars is so enduring and so popular that I think everyone gets to go through this, and it's a good thing. Which is, you have that moment where you realize that you have to create your own ending for this. You have to just like detach from whatever the franchise has done, whatever the people who actually own the IP have like deemed is the conclusion. You have to decide where this thing wrapped. You get to decide like what is the final shot of this series. And Patrick, I think to your point, like The Last Jedi, this movie's kind of a godsend to The Last Jedi because it really emphasizes everything that was good about The Last Jedi. So it really, like, that movie gets stronger in retrospect because this movie exists. But also, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to look back at this trilogy and see that it reached its natural terminus with the end of The Last Jedi. And then they made a third movie. And the problem was that they had to make a third movie. And not necessarily just that they made this one. Now, I think there were themes they could have continued from The Last Jedi. I think there were... The thing that got dropped between these movies that I found really fascinating was during Luke's training of Rey, where she senses both the darkness and the light in the Force, right? At the center of that planet or whatever. And he makes the observation that all the Jedi have been taught that it's this Manichaean divide between light and dark. And he's at a point now where he's starting to think there's just the Force. There's just there's a unity there. They're just one. And one of the things we've been consistently fucking up is thinking we can just boil it down to dark side, light side, and force people to walk one path and cut themselves off from other aspects of themselves. I thought that was a really fascinating notion to introduce in The Last Jedi, and I think it would have been really exciting to see a Star Wars trilogy that wraps up with... to be clear, I don't think what Luke is saying there is, it's all shades of gray, kid. Like, that's not what he's saying, right? But I think what he's sort of speaking out against is the sort of simplistic division we see in the early Star Wars films, and this notion that the galaxy should be ruled by these space wizard monks who deny themselves every human relationship, who are apart from society, and then on the other side, there's just basically planet-killing narcissists, running wild. I thought it would have been really cool to see a Star Wars trilogy that not only wraps up the Skywalker saga, as we're calling it, but also sort of wraps up the entire premise that a lot of the conflict in this trilogy was founded on, right? Because ultimately, this is what is the thing that has driven disaster throughout the series. It is this notion that you have this enormously powerful cast of like warrior priests who have who are playing with forces they don't fully understand or control, and are warping and twisting people to fit this vision, and it blows up in their face time and time again. And I think it would have been really cool to see something follow on from The Last Jedi that kind of questions that or pushes back against that. And instead, in this final movie, we get a complete return to the status quo that we've always seen in Star Wars, but everything is a little bit dumber and less sensible. Like it's everything. We're hitting undo on all of that, but also everything's going to be even more implausible than you've ever seen it before. So you're going to get a Palpatine devoid of any real plan or motivation or goal. It's just going
terrible
to be
MacGuffins. But all MacGuffins are inherently flawed, but these are some of the worst MacGuffins. I mean, like go to a planet and hold a dagger at one part, but you better go at the certain time and era and year when there's a certain amount of deterioration on that ship, because if there's too much deterioration on that ship, also it was actually just in someone's office. It was just in someone's office, and if you'd gone on that ship and just looked in an office, you would have found the item you're looking for.
For me, the biggest example of this is the fleet that shows up at the end to save the day, which I was like a contortionist in my seat when this happened. One, because it is one of the firmest refutations of one of the messages of The Last Jedi, right? The Last Jedi, ends with I believe Poe believing deeply that people would show up to help, that like, hey, we sent the message out. We put out the word, we need help, and no one comes. And then you have to face this thing by yourself. And this is a film that instead has this very liberal, like, there's more of us than there are of them attitude. The silent majority has their hearts in the right place, guys. That's it. All we got to do is count on them.
If they had to choose between a planet-killing evil space wizard who's just going to obliterate every planet in the galaxy, and people who don't want to do that, most people will choose the side of not destroying all the planets, even out of their own self-interest.
We don't need to show coalition building. We don't need to show why anyone would trust this particular resistance faction, why they would.
What if that was the movie? I would have thought that would have been like such a great premise. Was like, what if Luke's heroic sacrifice meant jack shit?
Yeah, and
people were like,
you have to build.
Yeah, you know what? The Jedi sucked and haven't really helped us a lot. What do we care about Luke Skywalker? And then they're faced with, shit. Like, what comes next? Which is like, that's a blank slate.
Yes, we can't rely on a space wizard to save us. Instead, what we got was a resistance that goes to one planet in the middle of a religious or statewide festival that then they ruin because they steal their ships and bring the First Order down upon them. Then they go to another planet where...
We kind of glossed over that part.
We go to another planet that's already been oppressed and terrorized by the First Order, which they ruin by their mere presence, their association makes it a target, and the entire planet is destroyed, destroying eons of culture and generations and everything else. And then third, they go to a planet where former stormtroopers are hiding out, and they recruit those stormtroopers to be their vanguard, who will be in the most dangerous fighting positions. This is a coalition I'm ready to join. I can't fucking wait. Why would anyone show up? And the answer is Lando sent a message, and you can see that message by going to the Galaxy's Edge amusement park and getting on the ride where they integrated that message. It's still the Fortnite thing.
What was his message?
It was the same thing. It's, we need help. It's me, Lando. I'm here to help.
I'm still here.
Remember me? Remember Wedge Antilles and Back to the Future? Space Invaders?
Hey, the Wedge part of the nostalgic bits in that film, the one shot of Wedge, like, that made my heart sung a little bit for that.
They fucking killed what's his name off screen, too. That's fun. The Lando's old co-pilot.
Nien Nub.
Yeah, Nien Nub. Yeah, dead.
Yeah.
Dead off screen. Which is like, I think, evidence of the thing you were saying, Rob, of like, there's just too much in this movie.
He still got better treatment than Rose.
Oh, absolutely.
Fuck.
Dude. This is the thing, we could go forever. The Rose shit sucks. It's brutal. She was so good in The Last Jedi. She held that film together at the parts at which it was weakest just by like sheer presence. But yeah, so yeah, I'm with all of y'all on this one. I'm sad. And yeah.
And yet, sometimes Star Wars shit happening remains cool.
Well, so right,
Yeah.
this is the thing. There's another
Like,
case.
Iceberg in space is a cool ass shot.
Yes.
Them landing on that Star Destroyer and like storming the forecastle of the Star Destroyer, basically, by running around on its hull, was kind of cool. Yes, I immediately had the thought that everyone did that, hey, this looks a lot like Rambo 3.
Oh.
Indeed it did.
I went another place. That's good though. Yeah.
Where did you go?
Mass Effect 1, the end of Mass Effect 1.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. But nevertheless, like that stuff was kind of cool. The scene that unequivocally got me, absolutely killed me. Kylo and Rey's fight on the ruins of the Death Star in among the breakers, and then him realizing his mother is dead, and then Han appearing. Yes, was it cliche and trite and manipulative? Absolutely. Did that scene work for me? Yeah, it did. Seeing Harrison Ford there one more
That's
time.
what JJ is good
That one
at,
didn't
though,
get
right?
me
Like
at
that's
all.
like his.
Yeah, that is.
Oh, that one got me too.
No, dude, like for me,
like,
'cause
come on.
I was already in that place where it's like you can't go back to old shit again. And also, all the Leia shit didn't work for me already because
no, that didn't work.
And so I went
course
into
not,
that scene with like her deciding from across the galaxy, I need to use the last of my. I have to get into bed and die so that I can reach out to my son and let him know I love him, because that is what finally will change his heart.
Well, because clearly, like in the script, like you can imagine, like she was supposed to be one that gave that speech,
Absolutely.
which would be a complete like parallel to like closing out
Yes.
like a lot of the themes of the trilogy of fathers and sons and mothers and daughters and yada yada
children.
yada.
Well, I mean, I think that scene worked for me. I think Harrison Ford closing it off with Ren being unable to say "I love you" and Harrison Ford giving the "I know," like that worked for me.
Yeah.
But I also think it points to a larger problem, which maybe some form of redemption was still available to this character, Kylo Ren. But I don't know that it comes that easily, man.
Yeah, dude.
This is one of those things where we are predisposed to forgive him because he's one of the major characters in this and because he has a weird charisma about him. Morally, there are things he has done in this trilogy that he does not come back from.
Find
right?
my fix fic where I spend 10,000 chapters writing an alternate universe where he lives at the end, has to live with what he's done, and then goes on adventures trying to like fix himself and like address the fact that he's done terrible things and what do I do now that I've killed this terrible part of me. And he goes on adventures, and there's probably a love triangle. There's probably like a love diamond between him, Poe, Finn, and Rey. It's great. It's really good. I can imagine, Disney, call me. We could just change the end of this movie if you want to. The thing I really loved with both of those characters, real quick, was the what is the desert planet called? No idea.
Jakku?
No, the other desert, the festival.
Oh, the festival
which
one.
could have been on Jakku. They could have just put that on Jakku.
The Chewbacca Memorial red herring planet.
Yeah, red herring planet. The bit where she destroys the cruiser fucking slaps. What a great moment, like the transport rather, where she and Kylo are trying to like pull it down,
right.
and she taps into this dark part of herself and just blasts it. Excellent. Give me that movie where we are, if we're gonna do the like, is she gonna slip into darkness thing, having that great moment of like she's pushed, and when she's pushed, she reaches back to something that anyone who's training in the Force has reached to now and then. The like intrinsic power of the Force over the restraint.
And it's a Last Jedi echo,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Like the moment that like Luke is with her, and she immediately goes is attracted to a part of the dark side, and it scares the shit out of him.
Love it.
That's how you pick up a theme from The Last Jedi and work with it. Because and also Chewie would have been a great character to just kill off, because he's the kind of side character, like, of course, it's like R2-D2 and C-3PO, of course they're going to be around. And so, like, her killing off Chewie, I was like, damn, like I didn't feel great about the movie at that point. I was like, but this is actually like a bold, interesting idea to like ground this character in some way. And then
they're like, there was a second transport.
Yeah.
And it's like, even in the shot composition, that's hard to believe. Like, we have a pretty good view of what's happening around there. We can hear things. Like,
it's a blue sky, baby. You would have seen.
Yeah, like, I didn't hear any other engines, man. Like, where was this transport? We saw him walk off. You're saying there's another one parked next to it?
It was 180 degrees behind the camera.
It was literally, the shot was from the other transport, actually.
This is the wrong transport. Put this Wookiee on the other one. Kato, what was your objection? You had something a second ago.
No, I mean, I was thinking back more to the end where Kylo dies and just the kind of fucked up, it rushes the redemption basically because he's like gots to be good to die.
Yeah.
Right? Or like for like that memory, for like his memories like now he was a good guy and now he's dead, but that's what we remember is that he was good at the end. Right? It was like
he definitely hasn't pulled this move before where he helps Rey kill her adversary and then heel turns immediately.
Also like weird that he disappeared but also didn't appear as a ghost.
Was not
again?
With the fam, no.
Like what is
find out in the DLC coming.
Look, he's in Jedi
season
hell.
3.
He's in
like, I mean, that's the real meaning of that is like his redemption was not complete. He's in hell.
Shout outs. Hell
Hate
exists.
to-
Hell
We've never-
exists. As we know, hell is a what's the name of the Corvette building planet? What's the planet Han is from?
Oh, Corellia?
It's a Corellian word that's associated with the a plane of death. It's a weird supernatural belief, but that's why he says hell.
I believe we had this conversation on a podcast.
Wait, did we?
At some point.
Maybe were you not there?
Mm-hmm. Maybe, but I know Austin and I definitely talked about Star Wars hell at some point.
Chaos is referred to as hell in Corellian mythology, and also known as the Void, was a reputedly dark region of the netherworld of the Force, inhabited by the spirits of deceased Darth Lords of the Sith, Dark Jedi, and the spirits of evil sentient beings who had died.
Have we ever seen anyone who's Force sensitive disappear that way and not be a ghost?
I don't think so. I think that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Is like, now I'm a ghost.
Now I'm part of the Force, and I can appear as a ghost.
Yeah, I'm part of the ghost parade. Let's go.
Another thing that I will say worked for me, and I think this would have been a decent beat to hit more in the movie, when after Leia dies and Chewie falls to his knees crying, and like the wail there, I think it was a moment where I was like, damn, like that's true. At this point, Chewie's seen pretty much all of his friends get killed in this unending war. Like, that is a powerful moment, but because, again, like, nothing has real stakes in this movie, it doesn't, like, that moment lands, but it just, the movie skips over the ramifications of all this way too quickly, right? Like,
it's because it's two movies. This is one of the first things I said when in our Discord when I came back from seeing it. It was like, it was JJ doing his middle and third part of the trilogy in one movie. Mm-hmm. So everything was rushed. Everything was rushed.
Totally.
Well, we should take a little break and maybe check in on some other Star Wars that maybe got people all the way back in. And we're back. So there's kind of been two major Star Wars events over the course of this holiday break. The first was Rise of Skywalker, and then the second was the finale of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. I was a little lukewarm on The Mandalorian to start out, and now that I have some distance, I think I'm back to being a little bit lukewarm on it. But
was there a full arc there? Did you stop being?
Oh yeah, dude, like episode 8, I was like, all in, baby. This is my shit. This is what a masterpiece. I can watch a million seasons of this, and then like 3 hours later, I was like, Why couldn't they just storm that fucking bar?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they should have stormed the bar. I sent a message to a friend last night. The Rise of Skywalker and The Mandalorian are both extremely. A 13-year-old wrote this Star Wars stories, but Mandalorian proves that 13-year-olds can be right. And I said the same thing. I said the same thing to my friend that you just said, which is that upon finishing, it's like, why aren't there 50 more episodes of this? Let me just put this on.
Yeah.
Like, that is what The Mandalorian turned into for me. It was a show I can't wait to put on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, not to watch it, but I want to put that show on in the same model that the shows that it's trying to be like, in the Hercules model, in that sort of like adventure show vibe.
Right.
I'm probably more warm than lukewarm.
Yeah.
Kato, you must have liked it because there was like a full episode's worth of content about people turning in loot and getting their destiny armor.
Fucking love it. Mandalorian's
Unlock
a Titan,
your ultimate.
I guess.
Yeah, Mando's definitely a Titan, right? Dude, if they had those rockets,
fuck.
give the Titans those cool wrist rockets.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I mostly enjoyed it. It dips in the middle for sure, but I think it made me need I have to go back and watch what was it, Clone Wars, because apparently that continuity is being brought back. So
Darksaber is real,
yeah,
baby.
it's real.
And it looks so goofy. I love it. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also the Mandalorian in totality. It's like part of the reason. So part of my favorite episode is the second episode of the series because it solidifies one of my favorite attributes about the character, which is that he sucks and he's not very good at this. Like, I mean, he is skilled. Like, he has a set of skills. He's clever, but it's often he's clever when backed against a corner, and he's not necessarily like he walks in, his plan's going to be great all the time. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes he does have a plan, and it just looks, badass. Like that time when he walks in and like throws that one of those bombs that now Siri is doing the same thing that it did to Rob, or just chronicled the last 2 minutes. But you know what I mean? Like there are moments
Can't trust
when
droids.
In the second episode when he's trying to scale the what do they call those things? The Jawas
the sand crawler.
Sandcrawler. Like he's trying to cut a sandcrawler and like, what a dumbass. Like just incapable of doing it. Like he's up there, he's getting thrown down. There are so many shots in this whole series where like he does something and he just gets the shit beat out of him in a way that I just really enjoyed because it's often the case that, yeah, like there are characters in Star Wars who they get hurt, but it's often still like a heroic sort of like getting hurt, like how we normally like watch these like superpowered characters. And often the Mandalorian just felt grounded in a way that like, man, he's trying his best. Like, he's pretty good at this, but he's not Boba Fett. Like, he's all right at this. Even Boba Fett, fucked
Boba
up
Fett
at the
flew
end.
into a sarlacc.
Right, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like, that's also part of, if that's like part of the culture of this sort of like warrior culture is like, well, you get a set of skills, you get some cool armor, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're all powerful. Like, I liked that plot, like that character thread of the Mandalorian that he often was kind of badass, but they would always swing the other direction and have him get outsmarted or get his ass kicked in a way that like was often kind of humorous. And I found myself really appreciating that part of it a lot.
Austin, I think both this entire new trilogy and also The Mandalorian, I think one of the things that's getting to me, and I'm curious what you make of this, is there is a notion, a school of thought in storytelling that everything happens at the speed of plot, right? Whatever this plot dictates is what the rules of the universe can sort of contort themselves around. But I think there's a point where you can push that and it begins to break down. Like in general, I think the needs of story, the needs of character development should probably come first. But at the same time, there should be some sort of constraints of a plausible realism within the framework of a fictional universe that give things stakes that help events and the ramifications be trackable and clear to a viewer. And I think one of the things that kind of gets to me with The Mandalorian, but also certainly got to me even with The Last Jedi, is that I think this generation of Star Wars feels like it is now fully leaning into everything that you could overlook with The Empire Strikes Back, that time, distance, space institutions, like these things either exist or don't exist as needed by the plot. And the Mandalorian at its best, I think, implied that there is this interesting universe of Star Wars out there, but at its worst, I think it also felt like it really hammered home none of this has any kind of internal consistency or reality within the fiction. All of it just serves as a set dressing for whatever needs to happen next in the story.
Right. Like I will say, I think this is just, I think partially this is just true for Star Wars, right? This is a world in which there is faster than light travel that is widely available, at least to the degree that you have thousands of individuals owning their own spaceships that they can pilot by themselves as if they were cars. And taking them across the galaxy, and yet you still have the idea of the backwater planet filled with resources yet to be tapped by some major political power, right? Like there are little farms. There are places like the place in episode 3 or 4. Was that 4?
Yeah.
Sanctuary, where he meets Cara Dune for the first time, and they do the Seven Samurai thing, etc. That like. Why hasn't someone come to that place? Why hasn't one of these imperial powers, by which I also mean the New Republic, shown up to try to exploit or assimilate these people? And then also, like, how long is space flight? How long is a trip from one end of the galaxy to another? I don't care too much about it, in the sense that I guess what I've come to realize, partially from The Mandalorian, but also through talking about stuff like Rise of Skywalker and the new trilogy in general, and thinking about my own fandom historically with the series, is I do really love Star Wars when it is episodic and when the boundaries of the storytelling works in two spaces. It works at the largest meta structure where big things happen, empires rise and fall, there are shifts in relationships between major political factions, the world has changed. And in the micro, in what you were saying before, character development, character interaction, that middle space has never really, the middle space, which is like, this is going to be a story about a particular political faction doing something, big for them, but small in the stakes of the galaxy, falls apart because of its inability to make that character level and the world building level actually speak together in coherence. And I think, in other words, for me, I think that ship sailed for me a long time ago, if that makes sense. The idea that you could have a place like Dathomir, right, with its own entire situation of force, which is an entire different understanding of the force, and then also you could have 30 other planets that are basically variations on the idea of force sensitive cults that somehow were never integrated into Jedi teachings, or
shout outs to the Falinasi.
There you go. I haven't heard that name in a long time. And etc. Like, okay, whatever. To some degree, and part of this is Star Wars works best when it is, or for me has always worked best when it is in the mode of storytelling that is like a fairy tale or one of its associated other modes, which include things like tall tales and war stories, where that what is happening is fucking fake. When someone says, "So there I was. I just landed on Tatooine, and you will not believe who walked into the bar." Like, that style of storytelling is at the heart of Star Wars, and is certainly at the heart of Star Wars novels, even if they don't admit it, even if they want to say that there's this big interconnected continuity. It's constantly writers unwriting what happened in another book. You mentioned this the other day with whatever the heist book was that I hadn't read, where it's like, and Han was there too, or whatever. And so, like, I'm already kind of okay with that sort of writing, because this is what I'm coming to Star Wars for. I'm not saying that it is the mode that I'm not saying I forgive it of its sins. I'm saying I recognize its sins and I'll live with them.
I think for me, part of it might just be aesthetic, right? That I think one of the things about Star Wars that I've always liked so much is that everything in Star Wars has such a concrete, tactile feel, right? That, like, ships feel like they have an existence. They've seen hard use. They've been beat to shit. They've been used for a purpose again and again and again. If you see a mining ship in Star Wars, It's going to look like a thing that's been crushing rocks
Hell yeah.
and getting bashed around asteroid fields for 30 years. The Millennium Falcon looks like someone's cobbled together like truck that they've kept running, through 3 or 4 generations, and it has the wear and tear associated with that. And so I think a lot of Star Wars sort of implies this object permanence of the things that inhabit the universe. But then in terms of the way Star Wars tends to tell its stories, these things can become weightless at will, right? It's why it's so frustrating that, there's Imperial Star Destroyers are terrifying. You see them appear in the sky above your planet and you know the Empire is here. And then Rise of Skywalker is like, what if 1 million Star Destroyers appear in the sky above your planet?
No, you're right. You're totally right.
And I think with The Mandalorian, like little things in the closing stages of this of the season, which I do think was a lot of fun, and I think pays off a lot of the foundations that were laid early in the season. I think it works on that level, which the new trilogy does not. It pays off the the things that are
visual
set up in the first act.
Yes, they show up in the third act. This is not like groundbreaking cinema here. This is the thing you do is you put the IG droid in episode 1 or whatever, and he shows back up in episode 7 and 8 or 6, 7 and 6, 7. No, just 7 and 8.
Yeah,
and rules and absolutely fucking rules. That sequence kicked ass. Anyway, go ahead.
Chekhov's
Chekhov's droid, yes.
But at the same time, I like things like, I forget Carl Weathers' character's name.
Do you mean Grief Karga?
Yeah.
Great
Awesome.
name. Yeah, dude. His name is Grief Karga. He's an ex-magistrate. What's his face? Gus from Breaking Bad shows up and is just like, I'm going to give the rundown on each of these. I'm going to read the dramatis personae write-ups of each of these characters, and you're going to realize we secretly had a dope set of characters in this show.
But at the same time, so at the end of the series, he's got to go back to that planet, and Karga's there, and somehow, the notion that, the guild that before we saw, this planet is overrun with bounty hunters. Karga's running this entire guild. Now everything has changed, but it's very hand wavy as to what changed here? Why? Last we saw, open warfare just broken out between the Mandalorians and the bounty hunters on this planet. Now all of that seems to just be gone.
Also, by this planet, you mean a main street, 7 buildings, because one town on this planet. Are there more? Who knows?
That's always kind of been a Star Wars problem, though, is that planets are the one town. It is, it's kind of also just a sci-fi problem, and you can only move so many places, but.
But Star Wars plays it up because they so often return to that Western Main Street motif. But then you have things like the tunnels where the Mandalorians were hiding. Oh, they've been wiped out. They're all gone, except the most important one. She's still there. Her her workshop's still. Yeah, exactly. And one of these things happening are okay, cool, but Star Wars and The Mandalorian feels like it's stapled together out of these moments where, oh no, all is ruin on this planet. A planet got blown up. A civilization, a settlement was wiped out. But anyway, here's that character who was clearly there the last time we checked.
But anyway, here's your jetpack.
And they're here to... Yeah. And so I think that's...
The argument got made very...
Aren't those problems just Star Wars problems, though? I feel like the problems I have with The Mandalorian are the problems that, I could poke holes at in, the original trilogy in a way that...
Patrick, I bought so many technical manuals.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Back in the day.
And the droid that stood up wasn't in any of them.
What are you trying to justify to me? I'm not. No, to me.
Bob's relationship is very physical. It's very material. Has a very. And I don't. It's not a dig. I get you.
But I'm saying that as a compliment to The Mandalorian, which my issues with it feel in concert with issues that I talk that are just in with Star Wars as a whole, and so that's why I responded so much better to it than something like Rise of Skywalker. Because it's the shit that when I sit with my friends, I go, but what? And you can do that with the original trilogy all day, and that's fine because that seems to better understand the strengths of Star Wars and its episode. I think that I'm far less interested in what they do in the theatrical releases of Star Wars in the future than I am in like what they could possibly do in the TV series. Because Star Wars at its best, like the original trilogy, is just 3 really good big budget TV episodes. It's just a 3-episode arc, and the strength of something like the MCU was understanding that it's really just a big budget TV series and finding ways to do storytelling in different ways. Like Star Wars came in with like kind of adopting a format that never made much sense in the first place. It's just a thing it did. And it's part of why I think The Mandalorian works as well as it does, is that its weaknesses are also born out of its episodic format because there's not necessarily as much happening in each episode. But taken as a whole, you're like, oh, okay, like those arcs worked for me.
To me, like it just was a slight problem that at the end we have this deadly, scary Imperial officer leading this elite strike force that cannot storm. Like, the thing that occurred to me after the fact was an entire episode, a siege episode, played out where the might of this deadly Imperial admiral couldn't walk into a bar and overrun like 3 people with blasters. And I was like, is that a dramatic confrontation? Is that really...
Didn't they want the, Baby Yoda?
They thought the baby was in there. Yeah, they were worried that.
So the way it fell apart for me was like, I understand why they didn't siege, because if you siege it, the building falls down, kills the little thing for whatever reason they need it. But then they send in a dude with a giant flamethrower, and it's just a coincidence that the child then holds up his hand and like defends everyone. It's like, all right, well, if I buy the logic of the reason,
what a
you're
good moment though.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
That's what the Mandalorian does over and over. Like even at its weakest moments, then it comes through with like
Baby Yoda.
It's so good. Like they were actually remarkably restrained in the first season, and I'm hoping production is far enough along because the new second season's fall 2020 or fall this year. So it's like I'm hoping the pull is going to be to react to that in a way that is in some way inevitable. But I actually found this season to be remarkably restrained, so that every moment that something did happen with that character, it there was a real gravitas and like emotional element to it that you could lose really quickly if he becomes the star of the show, or it becomes the star of the show, or they become the star. We don't know much about that.
We don't know anything about this baby.
Race of characters.
Yeah. So Rob, going back to the thing you said before around like everything feels so loose and undefined when it comes to institutions and knowledge about the world and stuff. I think it's all worth it to hear Carl Weathers say out loud, "Hey, let's make the baby do the magic hand thing. Come on, baby, do the magic hand thing." The fact that
ever feel like Carl Weathers has been an underappreciated and undervalued asset
unbelievable.
for 30 years.
There's a line in this thing where someone says an order of sorcerers named Jedi. Fuck yes. Absolutely. Talk about the Jedi like that. Like that's the stuff that again leans into the parts of Star Wars where you do have to, can you imagine not knowing 80 years if there had been
So
500
magic
years
wizards,
ago, magic wizards
lift buildings with their hands,
and were space cops, and who like traveled space and killed people. You would know people whose father or mother was killed by a Jedi, whose like defining moment was like, yeah, my dad was a slumlord, and then Mace Windu kicked in the door and said, "Not in my neighborhood, motherfucker," and killed him. And now I'm trying to do better. You would have those people in this world. You're like absolutely right, Rob.
Space is big.
Space is big. Time is long.
Right.
As I've said.
But we don't know how news or media, like that's also one of the
There's
big
no Twitter in
things.
space.
What we do, like that's actually like one of the fascinating parts of Star Wars that I wonder if they just purposely have decided to never address is like we actually don't know how communication, like mass media, works in Star Wars. Like we don't see television. We don't know how it's. As far as I can tell, like over the course of the 9 films, and obviously Expanded Universe maybe touches on this in the way that a lot of this stuff does, but like that like allows them to hand wave so much of that stuff. It's why they can set up like the Force Awakens. Like, yeah, they were just on a planet. They just forgot about the Jedi. But like, really? Like really? But maybe we don't understand how mass media works in this part of the galaxy, despite the fact that you have hyperlight travel, but you can't share the news, I guess. There's no one to report the news.
Fuck.
Oh,
give me
I know.
the newsroom in Star Wars. Give me
Oh my god.
The thing that my
We should be having a great debate between the light and the dark. The Jedi Masters and the Sith. That's what the old Republic was about.
You're right.
We used to have meetings of the minds, and now we just kill each other with lightsabers. The the Snuffy Walden soundtrack begins to spool up behind me.
I think if you kill a Sith, doesn't that just make you as bad as a Sith? If you strike down a Sith with your lightsaber, aren't you really the true Sith, actually?
Cannot wait for the last episode of the Mandalorian Newsroom Season 2. What kind of day has it been?
God. There's a bit in this that, so part of the reason I ended up liking this is because I don't know that it knows what it is fundamentally. My actual favorite bit all right, so when I first saw footage of this, it was a leak from one of the Star Wars fan event things. Maybe it was the one you went to, Patrick. I'm not sure. Did you end up going to that, or did you not go to that? I remember you.
I went to one day of this. No, there was the Star Wars Celebration was in Chicago, but I think D23, which is Disney's event in California, was where this footage was shown.
So that footage came out that was like the initial sequence of getting the tracking. We watched it in LA, Rob. I sat you down.
I vividly remember you were like, you got to see this.
You got to fucking see this.
And I was like, holy shit, I do need to see that.
Yeah, totally.
Fucking Werner.
And it was it's Werner Herzog, recruiting the Mandalorian for this mission, and then various cuts of the show, like various, like it's like a trailer at that point, and then it ends with the speech that he gives that is like, look outside, is the world more peaceful since the revolution, which is a fantastic speech, and it's better in the show. I've been waiting for this speech to be delivered this whole season because I love it so much. I don't have the whole text here, but it is like such a great villainous. We talked about it at the time as being this sort of like imperial liberalism where it looks at end results instead of looking at like the actual means by which it achieves them. And it says, judged by any metric, safety, prosperity, trade, opportunity, peace, compare imperial rule to what is happening now. Look outside. Is the world more peaceful since the revolution? I see nothing but death and chaos. I thought that was the end of the speech, but it's not, because he also says, I would like to see the baby. And that fucking amazing gut punchline is incredible. And it is the show, I think, completely knowing what it is, which is that it is an adventure show set in the Star Wars universe that's going to lean into the stuff you talked about, Rob, making the spaces feel real and banged up and ridiculous, but also not going to spend a lot of attention on the stuff that, honestly, the Clone Wars show does spend a lot of time on: the politics, the interweaving relationships between major organizations, the difficult decisions, being caught up in something bigger than you. It doesn't really want to do any of that stuff. It wants to be an episodic space western. It wants to be kung fu, but this guy has a rockets in his wrist.
I will also say Taika Waititi's sense of humor dovetails really well with The Mandalorian, because like at this point this last episode opens on basically a Star Wars sketch comedy. Right? It's the jokes we've always
shaking the blaster.
Yeah. But I love the scene actually works because it plays on a couple different things. One is that these are not really the Imperial soldiers we've seen in the past, right? Like they're basically an outlaw band as much as the rebels were in the movies. You know what I mean? Like they're all wearing cobbled together.
Good. Yeah, like the every time you've ever seen the fucking Empire, like it's always clean, super shiny, and like seeing those first stormtroopers in like banged, like totally fucked up. Just like things have moved, like changed from those.
Yeah,
movies.
These guys haven't rotated back to base in a while. There's no base.
There is no base. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so you basically got these guys just running around doing criminal shit in the guise of a national army. But then it's just such a good bit as they attempt, they're bored, they're shooting the shit. There's all why can't the Empire get its shit together? Because in the Empire, your manager might just start executing people at random. And it's like, this isn't a real good time. You should, I know you get some critical information, but call back in like 20. I might be dead but just hang loose.
God bless
And
the
then-
communicator unit. Him getting the thing back. He's like, yeah, I guess I'll check back in a little bit. And he puts the little tiny like microphone communicator unit back in his speeder bike. It's everything to me. That is Wife City to me, in the words of Drill.
Oh God, and I think that was one of the exciting things too, is that in that last episode, I like this version, sort of this Waititi infused version of The Mandalorian, which is we can do the ridiculous comedy bit, the knowing sort of wink at what Star Wars is. We can also sort of nod at what is happening in the broader story.
Yeah.
And then you can pay off that fucking moment where they are fucking with Baby Yoda, and then the IG shows up, and you've been waiting for it, and it is as good as you were hoping.
Yeah, I like definitely. I will say, like, so one, the like deep internal like vibes whenever they hit that baby in the canvas sack were real. I don't have a kid.
Yeah.
Patrick, were you okay watching that? Did you want to jump through your screen?
My kid's superpower would be falling down the stairs as opposed to floating themselves down the stairs. So I had a certain confidence that Baby Yoda. I mean, look, 1 or 2 episodes before, Baby Yoda tried to force choke someone.
That did happen.
Yes, I felt
cool.
bad, but I also was like, Baby Yoda is calculated. Like, there's a
Yeah.
little more going on here,
Right.
Beyond their size and assumptions about their intelligence. So,
You're right.
but yeah, like, especially because you couldn't see it. It was like a really good
It's
bit.
so effective.
Like, and there's no reaction, so you're just everything happens in your imagination.
One of the smartest things they do is, they do the bit in that sequence where the one scout trooper wants to see the baby, wants to see the creature, and so they get its face on screen. They've seen it. They know it's adorable. They know that this is a being who has sapience in its eyes. It is clear that that the Baby Yoda is adorable, and yet they punch the bag over and over again. Anyway, I will say the IG-11 bits, like really the whole gunfight, the one piece where, going back again to Rob's initial complaint, where it fell apart for me a little bit is and then it brings me back. So maybe I went from warm to lukewarm to warm again. The big gunfight in the streets where they are just like Wild Westing their way past blaster bolts. And I know they'd established that the troopers aren't good shots and that's a well-established thing. But like they are surrounded by dozens of scout trooper or stormtroopers at this point, and like not a problem to not get shot. But at the end of this sequence, at the end of this episode, it's like, but there's 12 of them at the end of this tunnel. What the fuck are we gonna do? Nothing. We can't do anything. We just have to. IG-11, you got to go out there and die for us, buddy. I know that's not exactly. I know he actually tried to tell IG-11 not to do that. And that was like, you just killed like 30 of them in a situation that was not much more tactically advantageous to you than this. I bet you could just win that fight. It's like playing an MMO or an RPG where you've killed 30,000 Imperial soldiers and then 6 of them come in the room because it's a cutscene and you're like, I guess we got to give up. It's the cutscene. We're gonna give up to these 6 Imperial soldiers, even though I just finished mopping the floor with 30 of them. And I was like, oh, don't. But that final sequence with IG-11 is so well done and so tongue-in-cheek, and knowing about what it's doing. IG-11 being like, I can tell that you're sad because I'm a nurse droid is extremely, extremely good, and got me, like, absolutely got me.
Huge Terminator 2 vibes.
I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, and also contrast that to the C-3PO scene in Rise of Skywalker, where they going for the exact same vibes, and yet that's a character in which a lot of us have histories that go past, go more than 30 years. This is a
You're like,
character
that shit ain't real.
we're going for I mean, this is a character we've known for 8 weeks, and it's like, God damn it, buddy. All right, you go do your thing.
Go do it. Yeah, you saved us. I'll always remember you, assassin droid, turned into a nurse droid. Also, little old frontier man.
What
what was his name?
Yeah.
The Ugnaught.
No, what was his phrase? I have spoken?
I've spoken.
No.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Isn't
Yeah.
it?
good.
Yeah.
God.
Also, that might be one of the most likable performances Nick Nolte's ever turned into.
Was that who that was?
Yeah.
Certainly
Holy
his best
shit.
performance of the last 15 years.
You didn't know that was Nick Nolte?
Dude, I did not know that was Nick Nolte. That's why I knew.
Actually, no, I'm an idiot. Hold on. Nick Nolte had a great performance in Warrior. That was good.
Thank you, Rob, for correcting yourself.
If you want a broken down sad old man,
Nick Nolte follows
get Nick
Rob on
Nolte
Twitter.
the phone.
Nick Nolte DMs Rob. I heard what you said. Thank you for
Don't
correcting.
shit talk the Incredible Hulk.
God. I mean, we should also just briefly talk about the show as like a vehicle for cameos. Every episode has someone in it, and you're like, that's that person. I love that they could have put Clancy Brown into any role. Clancy Brown could have easily been the badass Imperial Moff who shows up, who is instead played very well by what is his real name? Why am I blanking on his real name? Giancarlo Esposito. But instead they put Clancy Brown as the strong man in all of the devil. He's a Devorian. He's the Devorian strongman in the Prison Break episode. And like, you got Clancy Brown and you decided like make him a person who barely talks. Good for you. You know what? Congrats on that. Does anyone have a favorite cameo from this season or one that didn't work for you at all?
I thought the Amy Sedaris one didn't work, but it made me happy, if that makes any sense. Like, it felt, I don't know, I guess I just didn't, like, fully buy the character, but, like, I like stunt casting a lot, and that one, like, I just was a joy to watch her on. I was like, sure, she would never agree to be in a Star Wars movie, but somehow they got her. It was like, look, you just gotta be on set for, like, 2 days. You can see the Baby Yoda, you're good, you can tell your kids, and, like, that worked well enough for me.
That's probably the deal.
I mean, in the same episode, I was like, Ming-Na Wen.
Yeah.
I love Ming-Na Wen, and then they were like, time to wad this character up and throw her away.
Whoops. Yeah, definitely.
Also, who was who voiced one of the stormtroopers in that scene at the beginning of the final episode? It was
I don't know.
Who was it? Shit. Jason Sudeikis.
Oh, was it?
Oh, shit, that's perfect.
That's very
If you go back
funny.
and listen, you can pick up on it, but they did a really good job of masking his voice.
That's good. That's good. I don't like Bill Burr at all. And then they just cast him for all of his most abrasive qualities and made him a shitty dude from... I didn't know that Coruscant had a Southie, but it turns out he's from Southie Coruscant. Yeah, that was... Yeah. God, I like that show. I would like to put it on. I would like to put it on in the background while I'm playing an MMO or while I'm doing some busy work. I'm like doing my taxes. I would happily have The Mandalorian on, which doesn't rate it very highly. But I've said this before. I want more Star Wars, not because more Star Wars gets you to, wow, that was a really cool episode of this Star Wars thing. I want to start, and maybe this is the good part of the ending of it ending where it did. With the Rise of Skywalker is like, don't do that again unless you're really, really sure you're going to go for it. And instead lean towards The Mandalorian, lean towards Fallen Order, a game that didn't even crack my top 10 list, but which I enjoyed thoroughly. And that I enjoy the world in which they're not trying to make the number one thing, the best thing of the year. And instead they're just making things, and I can pick the ones I really love from that catalog. Related, I've been playing The Old Republic again. I don't know. We'll talk about that on Monday, maybe.
No, Austin, you can't.
What? What's wrong?
We cannot be held hostage to you going down an MMO rabbit hole every quarter.
Tell that to our audience.
Coming to regret
it. This is very much I'm cleansing my Final Fantasy palette. I'll probably be back to Final Fantasy in 2 weeks, but needed to. You needed
some Star Wars shit.
I needed some Star Wars shit, and I needed to like check my sensors. I needed to calibrate my sensors and be like, what am I missing here? Is Final Fantasy as bad as I remember? Is it as bad as I think, or am I misremembering other stuff?
Probably all need to check our sensors when it comes to Star Wars.
Absolutely.
We should can we conclude with just what the current rumor is on what happens next?
Yeah.
So there's supposed to be an announcement sometime this month. Probably right as the box office is going away, they'll just sneak in whatever this announcement is. But so the current what considered to be like the most legitimate rumor is that so There's been this big transmedia sort of like thing that's going to kick off in 2020 called Project Luminous, which is going to be a bunch of comic books. It's supposed to tie into like the EA Star Wars game that is coming out not this year, but next year. But so the summary is Project Luminous is rumored to follow a group of Jedi setting out to explore the then unknown regions of the galaxy. Oh, it's also set 400 years before the Skywalker saga.
Is it like outbound flight stuff?
The Jedi heroes would go on numerous adventures and encounter a few different kinds of enemies, including some sort of ancient Sith gods. There'll be various Jedi to follow, each with different strengths and force powers, similar to what we've seen from the Avengers in the MCU. But there'll also be heroes who aren't Jedi. And there would be an interconnected series of movies more emulated after the MCU. Specifically, I guess they're calling it the High Republic era rather than the Old Republic era, which would I guess been that's like thousands of years before the timeline in the original trilogy, or at least
the Old Republic era is weird because it's really long. The Old Republic, I believe the Old Republic era is like thousands of years long and has many sub divisions inside of it. Like the KOTOR era is in the Old Republic era, but it is not the only part of that era.
It drove me absolutely batty that there's Imperial officers, like as we've known them in the movies from the 70s.
Yeah.
Like in the Old Republic era, like, oh, that's an Imperial officer. And it's like some posh dude in an Imperial Navy uniform. And I'm like, you don't exist. That's my one beef with that whole period is like using it as a like endless territory for prequels, but then all the familiar Star Wars shit is still there. Just there.
I will say that my favorite stuff from stories that take place in that era or in other like ancient Star Wars eras is when the technology is like meaningfully different and the visual language leans even further towards space fantasy, or you do get the pristine Sith temples, you do get the pristine pyramids and monuments and stuff. That stuff ends up feeling distinct, but more and more, like again, I'm playing Old Republic right now and it's like, yeah, this is just the Empire. Like you just wanted to, and I get it that you basically had a meeting that was like, oh, people want to play this, so we should.
Yeah, you can't make a Star Wars game without
British, without British accent, without bad guys who have British accents or whatever. But I definitely, it is a big thing to hand wave. Though maybe less a big thing to hand wave when you have a universe that the very fabric of it is about cycles and intrinsic qualities of things and people and secret empire after secret empire and a different nebula in the unknown regions of space. But yeah, I'm with you.
Remember when there's that entire Han Solo series of books and there's like the corporate sector that was like distinct from the Empire, and it was basically just it was like, what if your bank owned a sector of space and like the mall cops just fucked with you relentlessly?
Which is to say, it was the most honest of all Star Wars.
Yeah, stuff. Yeah. In retrospect, Han Solo at Star's End really does become a standout. I think we will leave our discussion off for there. Hey, is the Rian Johnson trilogy still on, or is that completely dead?
I feel like he would have said, like, his lines while doing Knives Out, which you haven't seen, you should go see. It's really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Is sneaking a show about it.
Is that he hasn't said, he's like, hey, they're working out what they're doing. I still want to do it. I feel like if he wasn't going to do it, maybe he would have said it. Or maybe there's the cynical version is like, or the smart version for Rian Johnson is like, if he wasn't doing it, he wouldn't say that right before the new movie came out because that would have just caused such a negative news cycle. Yeah. So he just keeps saying like, yeah, like I'm still interested, waiting for Lucasfilm to figure out their thing and we'll see what happens. And that quietly, maybe that goes, away. But we don't know. He keeps saying he wants to do it. And the whole idea behind this new initiative, I guess, is that they're getting rid of the trilogy format. So there's a world where he could be off doing his own thing. Also, he could do a TV series just fine, I think that would be just as interesting. I think Rian Johnson's never done a television series, and I think he would do well in that format. Oh, also one small
he's
thing.
Never run a television series.
Yeah. One small thing was that I really love the Mandalorian didn't use Star Wars music. I thought that was really great.
Yeah.
I think it has a great soundtrack.
Is great.
I've been listening to it on Spotify all the time. It has it's a great theme, both for like the intro and like the little bit that like signifies that the show is starting, and then the end credits theme is really great. I just like that even at the end, even in the finale, like no, like, and I love John Williams' soundtrack. I love the work that he's done in Star Wars, but I think it was like low key super bold that like that for like Star Wars, like in the spectrum of what is bold for Star Wars, that they didn't include any of that shit. And I think they found their own. It helped make the show find its own identity by not doing that.
Yeah. The other stuff that is confirmed coming that is not movies are the Cassian Andor series, the actual the spy from Rogue One, like a prequel story for him, and then an Obi-Wan standalone, which Ewan McGregor is signed on for, which.
I think that could be good.
I think that could be good.
Like I like Ewan McGregor a lot, and he does really good genre work. He was really great in Doctor Sleep, which came out a couple months back and nobody saw it, but I think is maybe actually a masterpiece. So Ewan McGregor.
And then season 7 of Clone Wars on its way this year. 12 episodes of that coming next month, I think, February.
So Clone Wars is legit continuing.
Yeah, dude. It's legit continuing.
But haven't they gotten to order whatever it was?
I don't know. I fell off of Clone Wars around season 2 or 3.
I think Clone Wars like occurs during like Order 66 and then picks up after and like deals with like, isn't like the retcon that Clone Wars does is that they weren't like their people and it was like they had a chip. Maybe I'm spoiling things at this point. Well, I guess we're in spoiler territory.
I don't know. I'm just starting down that road.
I think Clone Wars is supposed to deal with like what is it like to have killed a Jedi and then you have to go on living your life and like fleshes out some of those like troops into like real characters.
Okay.
I've read that that's like part of what makes that show interesting.
Those characters,
it's an interesting show.
The Republic Commandos in that, like the clone troopers, are absolutely characters who do develop their own personalities. Like that's a key thing from episode 1. Literally episode 1. It's pretty
Yoda's
clear,
like, here are your personalities. You're a heavy weapons guy. You're a leader guy. You're Donatello.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
You do machines.
It's good though. But I'm actually getting into that series, so we'll discuss it at some point, possibly on a future Waypoints. But for now, we have to wrap it. Our thanks to Too Mellow for the track "Slide Asleep" off the album After Midnight. You can find that at twomellomakes.bandcamp.com. You can keep up with all of us at waypoint.vice.com. I'm Rob Zachney. You can find me on Twitter at Rob Zachney. Patrick, where can people find you?
At Patrick Lubbock.
Austin.
At Austin_Walker.
Kato.
Ooh, that was a gurgle.
That was a gurgle gargle.
Well, that will do it for this week's Waypoints. We hope you've enjoyed the break. Please be sure to rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice if it allows such a thing. I think we're a 5-star podcast, but that's my statement today. That is a statement. We are a 5-star podcast.
Replies.
No replies.
No replies will be taken at this time. We'll be back again with Waypoint Radio on Monday. Until then, do not give in to astonishment. Okay.
Isn't that what we all do with Star Wars, though?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
Mesmerized by spectacle.
A good one.
That wasn't
bad.
That wasn't bad.
That
Make a new-
Chewbacca?
What?
Was it?
Was that a
I
Wookiee
don't know what
noise?
I'm not talking about.
Okay. Perfect. There we go. Yeah, that's great.
That one felt more like gargling.
Yeah.
It did.
They-
You went a little
it
too-
gets
a little
more
too-
into
too hard on that
gargling
one.
each time.
The worst thing is that you had a good one, but it was not recorded.
No, it was not recording
So,
when I did the
no one
good
heard that.
The one where you weren't thinking about it.
Yeah. That's just like Chewbacca is just like in it, you know? Because of being a person who just speaks like that. By the end of that original trilogy, do they all know how to speak Wookiee? Just like the main crew? Or is it still only Han?
I feel like Luke can. I don't think Leia can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, they talk less to Chewbacca in that original trilogy.
Also, what the fuck? You can hear what he says, but you can't like have the decency to speak back in his own language.
I bet they can't. I bet they're.
Or is there like you never see someone speak it, right? Like a human?
In the extended universe, probably.
Well, yeah,
right?
but I'm just wondering if there's like a rule. Like, is there like the human voice?
Can
can't,
humans
yada, yada,
speak
yada.
Wookiee?
Oh God. Okay.
Here
The
we go.
longest thread in the forums, etc.
Lore
We are-
reasons, Star
right?
Wars.
Are we recording?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we are.
I'm
recording.
recording on this end.
Austin,
Good.
do you remember?
What's up?
I'm recording.
In the Thrawn trilogy,
Yeah.
when Leia is hiding out from the Nogri kidnappers, and she goes to Kashyyyk,
Yes.
and they meet Chewbacca's old buddy, who can speak Basic.
Yes.
And she's like, what? Chewbacca, you never told us that you had a speech impediment. And the Wookiee is like, ha ha ha, very funny misunderstanding. It is actually I who have a speech
Right.
impediment.
Yeah. It's real.
It allows me to speak Basic, but not perfect Wookiee. And everyone's like, ah, yes. But then, of course, Zahn is doing that thing.
It's not
where-
Wookiee. It's Shriwook. Please.
Thank
Wow.
you. Yeah, I feel
Thank
better.
you.
Damn.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I looked that up. Please do not. Like, Wookiee vocal cords render it near impossible to speak Basic, which I guess
The Galactic
is that the
Basic.
robot language.
No, Galactic Basic is,
yeah,
is what everyone speaks.
yeah,
It's
their
English.
foundational language. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Humans can speak Shriwook, but it is difficult to replicate and can be very harsh on the throat.
As we demonstrated.
That was not
That was
it at
bad.
all.
That was.
Kato, just let it come back.
We're going in
not
a wrong.
gonna-
We're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
getting worse.
That was rough. All right.
We should
Time dot is.
time that is. All right, 55.
Sounds good. All right.
All right, so I figure a segment we'll do Rise of Skywalker, and then we can talk about Mandalorian.
No, a segment is we need to talk about what happened on my Twitter account.
Okay.
Perfect.
We need
Yep.
to talk through this.
Yeah.
I need feedback.
Yeah.
Wait, what happened on your
We'll
Twitter?
get it. We'll get
Do
it.
it. Just, you know what? If you've forgotten, don't worry. It'll hit you as you open the podcast.
Oh no! Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Okay, yeah.
I still don't know. This is exciting.
Kato doesn't know.